Today we have a preview of Canals of Windcrest. This is set in the Mistwind universe. It's, I think, the second game within that universe from First Fish
Yep.
Games. This got some similarities, but it is a completely different game. But
Yeah.
spoiler alert, flying whales.
Definitely. I mean, the flying whales are a big part if you've never played Mistwind. And it does have some DNA that you might recognize
Yeah.
from Mistwind. You're putting out things on the board instead of building those like transport hubs. You're building bridges across canals. You're putting out more whales. You're still moving things around. You're picking up goods. You're delivering goods. A lot of that's still happening, but very different mechanics. And they've added a few steps to the process and turned it into what I would probably call a heavier game than Mistwind.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this is heavy. Ryan and I talked about this before we started recording. It's definitely north of medium. And I want to be specific about that. It's not heavy in terms of mechanically how you play it. Your turn is pretty straightforward. You play a card, you do some things. It's pretty much very similar each turn. But the thinkiness involved with taking that turn and making sure you took the right turn before that, and you're thinking about the next turn after that, is definitely a big part of this game.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the game itself. And you're seeing here a two-player game already set up. We kind of set it up halfway through so we can showcase a lot of what you're going to see. But this is what the board is going to kind of look like as you're putting out the whales, as you're putting out the bridges. None of these start out on the board. A lot of what you're doing is to build these. And you might think, okay, it's kind of like a route building game to an extent, because what you're really doing is you're moving around your whales, trying to pick up passengers and deliver them. And at the same time, you're moving your supervisors over these bridges so they can come to different areas and collect goods. Really, those are the two main things you're doing to pick up. And then over the course of the game, you're going to deliver. And that's kind of a complicated process.
Yeah, the delivering comes in a few ways. Like Ryan said, you're going to deliver those passengers. When you drop those passengers off, it's going to allow you to bump up some tracks on your player board. A big part of scoring here are these export goods that you're going to be getting delivered around the outside edge. But when you do, you're going to ratchet those tracks up, and then hopefully you're going to deliver a lot of those export goods so that you're going to have a multiplier at the end on each of those tracks with those export goods that you delivered, which you deliver with your whales, moving those around the edge of the board and basically fulfilling some of these contracts that are around the edge.
Yeah, and you're going to see all those demand tokens kind of outside, and there's an A stacked on a B that gets a little harder. Like I said, we do have a two-player game set up. In a 3- and 4-player game, you're actually going to extend the board on either side, and there will be more of these contracts. So there's more spaces to build on, there's more contracts to deliver to, and there's more cards in the game, because a lot of what you're doing in the game is driven by cards. When you're playing a two-player game, you're only using some of the cards that reference the locations that you have. All of the rest of the cards that reference locations we're not using are just taken out of the game. So the card play dictates a lot of what you're allowed to do in a round. And you can kind of see here that I've already kind of played my 4 cards out. The game is played over 4 rounds. Every round you're going to play 4 cards going back and forth, but those cards are drafted. So at the beginning of every round, you're dealing out these cards to everyone's hand. You're choosing the ones you want to keep. You're going to end up with a hand of 5, of which you're going to play 4 over the course of the round. And these are important because number one, every round you play one of these cards, you're going to get some kind of action or some amount of goods that you just get just by playing the card. And then secondly, every one of these is going to have a location that corresponds to a location on the board. If you're planning on building things like building those bridges, putting out new whales, adding these supervisor tokens out onto the board, it has to be done at one of the locations in which you've already played a card. So the first time you play a card at the very, very beginning of the round, I might only have the option to put things in B, but then as I play more cards, I'm getting more and more options. That's a huge part of the game.
It's giant. It's giant. I would say we talked about this, whether it's multi-use. I'd rather say that it's multi-purpose, because multi-use generally implies that you're going to use a card, but then you're not going to use it for something else. Multi-purpose means that when you play it, or more importantly, when you draft it, you want to pay attention to not just the one thing, but also the other thing. Because a lot of these actions, or like Ryan said, a lot of the resources that you just get to collect can be very appealing. You'll look at that and go, oh, I want all those. But the location, if you didn't pay attention to that, it might not be a location where you necessarily want to build or place one of the supervisors and things like that, which is that thing that I was talking about earlier where you have to plan. Like you have to think ahead because there's going to be moments in the game, at least the first time you play this, probably some moments where you do a thing and the person who's played more will go, actually, you can't do that because you don't have the bridge in the right place or you don't have a card in front of you that lets you build there. So there's going to be a lot of that planning involved. So just be prepared for it.
Yeah, so playing that card is important, and the order that you play the cards really does matter. Because, like I said, they kind of build on each other. Maybe you want to play a card early that gives you resources that you'll use later. Because after you play a card, you're going to get to take one of the 4 primary actions in the game, and you'll see those listed on the player board. Now, what's kind of neat about this is each one of these actions has a level. As you do certain things in the game, as you move across this rondel, or as you deliver some of these export goods, you'll be able to level up these actions, and as you do, you'll get to do a better and better version. So that definitely has a ramp where maybe at the start of the game when you do an action doing one thing, but then by the end you're moving your whales 6 spaces, you're moving these supervisors all across the board and things like that. But the unique thing here that you have to keep in mind is you're always moving this disc. You can never take the same action twice in a row. And even when you get like to the end of the round, this doesn't just like come back. It always stays. So you're always kind of thinking, okay, well, if I want to build, I want to build in B. So maybe I need to play the B card early. But if my first action isn't to build, I don't have to play that B card early. So, there's the whole timing of the order that you play these. By the last action, you're going to have all 4 cards played out. So you'll have the option to play in any of those 4 spaces. But again, these are the only 4. So if you drafted poorly and you ended up with like 4 that were like really close together, that's the only area of the board you're going to get to do anything in really as far as building goes.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about that action selection between the rounds, because not only what Ryan just said, but during that draft, if you left your last round saying, okay, the first thing I want to do on the next round is build, there's a specific place you're wanting to build, most likely. In that case, if during the draft that card is not in your hand, you better hope that it comes around to you, and you better hope that another player is not going, oh, I bet he wants to build there, I'm going to take this. Now, with that said, I don't know that the draft is going to necessarily involve a lot of hate drafting.
It can more in a 2-player game.
It could in a 2-player game, a little bit more than 4, but more often than not, I think you're going to be looking at the things because of the intricacy of all the things you're trying to get done. You're going to be very focused on trying to get the cards you need to do that, as opposed to the cards you want to take to prevent someone from doing something else.
Well, and there are a lot of carrots that they dangle in front of you with these cards. We talked about the fact that whenever you play a card, you're going to get resources, you're going to get access to an action. But as you progress through the game, there's a light, almost like card crafting mechanic that's happening here. One of the actions you can take, the build action, this is what lets you put new whales out. This is what lets you put new bridges out, which you kind of need to do to move the game forward. But it also lets you put these buildings out. When you build these buildings, they're going to come out onto the board. So again, like I could place it in blue B area. I can place this building out. I could mark that it's mine. Building a building is great. It's going to give you an action you could take on the board, but it's also going to give you a kind of card crafting element where you can take this, slot it in, and now everyone that drafts this card in the future is going to get whatever was printed there, plus the new action that you just added. Now, chances are you're probably not going to get this card back unless maybe it was dealt to you. But they do give you, like, if somebody uses your action card, you get like a little bit of a benefit. But this is, I don't want to call it hate drafting either, but these cards become very lucrative once they start getting added to.
Yeah, when you add to a card and in that next draft, it's in your first hand, it's a really tough decision not to take that card that has the extra action, unless it's something you don't want to take at all. But that, along with those action levels kind of moving up, are really the 2 things that help this game ramp up significantly. Because in the first round, you're going to feel like, well, how are we going to get anything done by the end of this game? Round 1's over. I've built a bridge. I've not moved my... there's things you won't have done in the first round because you literally can't probably do all the things given the resources that you have unless you've planned really well. But in the 4th round, you're going to be playing cards and doing quite a bit more on the cards. And those levels of the actions, hopefully, if you've leveled some of them up, and all of them level up 4 different levels, will allow you to do a ton. Like Ryan said, just the whales is probably the best example because at the beginning, you're just moving 1 whale, 2 spaces, up to 2 spaces. Whereas later, you might have 3 whales on the board and what, 6?
6 movements to split?
6 movements to split across those whales. And one of the things we haven't mentioned at all, which is kind of an interesting thing when you move the whales, is after you've moved your whales, depending on what nodes they're on, you're able to move around this sort of rondelle up here and collect additional resources. And two of these spaces, or one of these spaces, allows you to level up those actions too. This is an interesting puzzle because you kind of have to very systematically go. So for instance, I'm right here. If I wanted to move up 2 spaces on this, I'd need to move my whales. One would have to end up on the pink spot and the other one on the gray spot. And then I could go pink, gray, and collect those. Otherwise, if I move to different colors, this is not moving until the next time. Hopefully, I move my whales on the right location.
Yeah, and you're leveraging that versus that whole pick up and deliver element. Whenever you build a bridge onto the board, you're adding a citizen onto it. You're drawing it randomly from the bag. These citizens are all different colors and they want to go to different places. They want to go to work and they have different jobs and they want to go be social, whatever. Your goal is to deliver these people to where they want to go. If you can match it up to, like, for example, I want to deliver somebody that's this dark blue color, right now, because I'll get the bump on the rondelle if I do that, and I'll get to cash them in. When you cash them in, you get to place them on some of these spots that are going to increase multipliers for in-game scoring. So delivering people is key, but if people don't build bridges, you don't get any of these citizens. Now, it's worth noting that once you build a bridge, you put a citizen on it, that's yours. He's waiting for your taxis. No one else can come mess with that, which is nice. So you kind of, you don't have to rush to it or worry about that kind of level of like, take that. But every time you build a bridge, you're going to add a citizen. There's a couple spots on the board that if you just move your whale to, you might get a citizen from there as well. But figuring out how to strategically deliver them is key. Like David said, if you can arrange it so that you're moving to the exact same 3 spots you need, and one of those is a delivery, you're moving the rondelle 3 times, possibly delivering a guy, getting the bonus for delivering him, that can feel really good. And also you're positioning your whale to potentially deliver these export goods along the outside. If you do that, if you can complete one of those contracts next to them, then you get to take your goods off of your player board, place them out onto the goods board, and gain a ton of rewards for that as well. So by the end of the game, you are taking some very satisfying turns.
Yeah, and you pretty much have to do all these things.
Yeah.
You can't not do these export goods because, like Ryan just said, that gets them out on there not only to get those bonuses, but only those goods that you've delivered like that are going to get multiplied by the multiplier of that corresponding good. Like Ryan in this game got this one all the
I went heavy on canned food.
Up to 6 points. If he got all 3 of those out, that's 18 points at the end of the game. And I will say, this game is not like a massive amount of points. You're not going to score a ton of points during the game.
Sure. Most of it's in-game scoring.
Most of it's in-game scoring. You're going to have some buildings that score some end-game points along with these tracks. And that's primarily the biggest part.
Well, and your investors as well.
Yes.
So you're going to start the game with 3 of these investor cards. And a lot of the rewards that you get during the game are going to let you draw new investor cards from the deck or play one of the investor cards out of your hand. These investor cards can give you immediate effects. They can give you resources. They can give you once per round actions, but they always have an in-game scoring condition as well. So if you build a lot of buildings that have in-game scoring, if you play a lot of these guys that have in-game scoring, and if you deliver a lot of goods, that's a lot of different points. But the thing is, you're not going to be able to do all of that. There's just not enough time in the game. There's not enough resources. So you have to focus. I focused on the canning industry. That's my industry. I moved that truck all the way up and I'm delivering a lot of canned goods. But there's bonuses too. If you deliver all 4 different types of goods, you can complete columns to get some scoring. So the game might actually encourage you to divest. And then again, based on what you're scoring, some of these cards will score some of the same things that are on the buildings. So if you get an investor that scores the same thing as a building, you can kind of double up your points that way too. So there are a lot of different ways you can play the game and a lot of different ways you can focus scoring. But I do agree with what you said. You do need to do a little bit of everything.
You do. And in fact, the player boards even suggest that if you were to be able to masterfully do so, if you get goods delivered of each type, 5 of them, which seems to us very challenging, you're going to get some points across the top of the board as well, which is pretty crazy. And I want to say this again. We mentioned this earlier, but I want to underscore it. All of this is a very layered process, a very process-oriented steps that you're going to have to take to get there. Those export goods that we were talking about, like I said, we mentioned this, those, you don't just pick those up. You're getting resources, and there's a whole action where you're converting those resources into those export goods. And even that action doesn't allow you to do that infinitely. At the beginning, you can do it once. If you level it up, you can do it twice and you get a little bit of a discount. But Everything is kind of a process that moves slowly at first and then really, really ramps up.
Yeah, and what's cool about these actions, the way that they're leveling up, you'll notice that some of the actions when they're at a certain level will give you a little bit of another action. Like if you
Yeah.
move the manufacturing all the way, you can move your whale. If you move the whales all the way up, it lets you move those supervisors around the board, and the supervisors let you move the whales. So you can do it in a way that between the actions on your card, like I have a card here that moves my whales and supervisor. Then I can take the whale action, move my whales again. If it's all the way leveled up, then I get to move my supervisor again. All of these things can benefit. I'm positioning myself, I'm moving on the rondel, I'm grabbing resources from wherever my supervisor ends their movement. All of that stuff is coming into my pile
On one turn.
on one turn. So you can gather a lot, but then you have to convert it. All of this stuff, it factors in. That's why we said this is maybe more of a medium game,
Or
medium
more,
heavy,
yeah.
maybe, just because you have to plan that well. You can have somebody that's taking a turn where they're, I got one resource this turn, and the other player's like, I mastermind this and I collected 6 resources, and you're like, well, I'd like to be able to do that.
Yeah, the turn Ryan just described can happen, but to contrast that, at the beginning of the game, a turn you might take, you might play a card that gives you a couple mushrooms and a steel.
Yeah.
Very basic thing that gives you some resources, and then you move your whale twice. And you might move your whale twice, and it doesn't really do much for you other than set you up for your next whale move. That's your turn compared to, a windfall of resources and moving your whales and delivering citizens and all of that. It really does feel satisfying working to get there if you can think through that process.
Yeah, and the other way too, the other way the game really ramps up is with these end of round bonuses that you get. As you place your bridges and as you place your supervisors out on the board, you're uncovering these little orange bonuses. A lot of these are victory points. Some of them are playing cards. Some of them are moving on the rondel. At the end of every round, you're going to get all of these bonuses you've uncovered. So in David's example, maybe in the first round, you only built one bridge. You get 1 point and 1 movement on the rondel, whatever. But then by the end, if you build all your bridges, man, you're getting 10 points and 5 movements on the rondel at the end of that round. So the game is like built. It wants to encourage you to do that. And by the time you get to the end, and you're almost like that's like a half movement on the rondel for that if you've cleared all built all your bridges. So it really does ramp up. And I'll say I like a good satisfying turn where you're just getting stuff from all over the place.
If you can make it happen, for sure. And like Ryan said, the game actually refers to those as bonuses at the end of the round. It feels very much like a production phase in many games. So if you play a lot of games where you're like, okay, I did all this stuff, now it's time for production. Later in the game, it definitely feels that way. At first, when you've uncovered one thing, it feels like a bonus. At the end, it feels like boom, because it can really set you up. If you move around this, you're collecting a lot of resources that might set up your whole next turn.
Oh yeah,
too.
You can get a lot of resources from this rundown. And it's worth noting that you get everything you pass by. You get you get everything. Like if you can move 3 spaces, you get all 3 things. And if you get back to the starter spot here,
This is a great spot.
you get one of these decree tiles, which just gives you a ton of resources. You get one of these too. Whenever you add those buildings out to the board, you'll take one of these tiles as well. So there's just so many different ways to get resources, but yet the game feels tight because building stuff just requires so many resources too.
Yeah, there's a lot going on if you're looking for a medium plus Euro. And if you liked Mistwind or those kind of games, I think this game is something you'll want to check out.
Yep.
If you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.